In the case of Silent Hill 2, however, we're definitely seeing James's mental issues in monstrous forms, and that's what I plan to discuss in this video. So, let's have a look at the various monsters. First up, let's examine the lying figure. The name in and of itself seems to call Mary to mind, given the fact that her illness caused her to be confined to her bed. The creature itself also serves to symbolize the relationship between James and Mary. The lying figure overall is somewhat curvy in shape, giving it a somewhat feminine appearance, most notably in the legs. However, the upper half is wrapped in what appears to be a straitjacket of flesh, completely encased. This part represents some of the frustration James feels, most notably in being unable to touch or feel Mary, his inability to be close to her. Next we have the Mannequin. This creature is a bit strange, seemingly comprised of two sets of mannequin legs, one atop the other. It seems to serve as a symbol of James's sexual frustration, as it has a decidedly female form. However, another thing that can be noted is, be the top part legs or arms, there are no extremities to them. No hands, no feet, nothing. Just a bare stump. This could also be a symbol of James's frustrations at being unable to touch Mary, much as is the case with the lying figure. The fact that it's a cold plastic mannequin always found dormant before attacking could possibly even be a symbol of how James views Mary during her illness, convincing himself that she died 3 years ago when in reality she was still alive at that point. The illness just made her seem cold and lifeless to him, an empty shell of her former self. Next comes the Silent Hill staple, the nurse. Gone are the strange loping figures of the puppet nurses from the first game, and instead we have the bubblehead nurse. Notably, there are no male doctors this time around. The bubblehead nurse has definite ties to James's edginess about visiting Mary in the hospital during her illness, but obviously there's more to it than that. The nurses wear very revealing outfits, a mini skirt that shows off their legs, and a low-cut top that reveals ample cleavage. Clearly, it is a sensual image, or at least Silent Hill's idea of sexy. This gives it a representation of James's feelings of sexual deprivation, his desire for intimacy, but his inability to share this with Mary. It's also notable that the nurses seem to lack facial features. There is a theory that this could show his uncertainty about Maria, due to the fact that he meets the nurses soon after meeting her. However, I think it's more likely a display that James is enticed by the female form, but hasn't really gotten to know any women other than Mary. He wanted to remain true to Mary, faithful to her, so he hasn't allowed himself to get close to other women, hence the nurse's appearance as faceless fantasies. Now for the rarely seen Mandarin. It's notable that it is never seen above ground, and this is quite telling as to what it symbolizes. The Mandarin is guilt, plain and simple. It's a guilt so deep and painful that James cannot bear to admit to it, the fact that he's killed Mary. He keeps this pain buried, never letting it reach the surface, and thus the Mandarin cannot stand above ground, merely able to attack James as he passes overhead by stabbing at him, just as the slight hints of his crime poke at him from time to time, making him momentarily remember before burying it again. Next, let's discuss Flesh Lips. This rather creepy boss from the hospital seems to have quite a lot of symbolism to it. One rather telling thing is that, in design documents, it was once referred to as lustful lips. The less said about that, the better. Overall, they are symbols of Mary. The cages they're suspended within, it seems to symbolize the confinement she suffered, being restricted to her bed. It is notable that their method of attacking is to attempt to strangle James, much as he killed Mary by suffocating her with a pillow. This symbolism is also present in Maria's final boss form as well. Her tendril attack tries to strangle James, and she herself is confined to a flying metal cage. However, there is another important motif to discuss with Maria. First, while fighting her boss form, she can attack with clouds of black moths. In Japan, moths are a symbol of death. Comparatively, butterflies are a symbol of rebirth, and it is notable that Maria has a tattoo of one on her midriff. On the subject of insects, there's also the creeper. This is an interesting one, as it's the one monster that returns from the original Silent Hill. In this, it is possible to assume it's simply a manifestation of the town itself, rather than any one person. Possibly it could also be seen as a trace recollection of Alessa's power, or a symbol of overall decay. However, another interpretation that I've read is that the creeper may be a representation of the protagonists themselves, small and helpless like insects compared to the power of the town and the fear instilled by its monsters. Now we come to an interesting one, the abstract daddy. This creature is very strange indeed, taking on the form of what appears to be a mobile bed with two figures atop it, a larger dominating figure covering a helpless smaller figure. The first encounter with Abstract Daddy takes place in the labyrinth, while meeting with Angela. Given the things we can piece together about her past, the Abstract Daddy seems a clear representation of the pain she's gone through. The figures of the monster can be taken as an act of forced intercourse, likely mirroring Angela's rape by her father. This much seems cut and dry, though of course highly disturbing. But then James begins to see them himself at the hotel. Why would he be seeing them? One interpretation is that they're there because Angela is there. We do, after all, have our final meeting with her at the hotel. But why would that affect James? He has no foreknowledge that she's there, nor does he particularly have any special ties to her. She's just another traveler he's met in this strange town. After all, we never saw any of Eddie's monsters, and we had basically just as much of a connection with him as we did with Angela. The thing is, the figures in the bed are rather vague in what they're doing. While it could be interpreted as rape, there is another possibility, far more suited to James. The Abstract Daddy could also be seen as a larger figure, representing James, smothering the smaller figure, representing Mary, thus being a final symbol of James suffocating Mary in bed. Finally, there's the big one. It's time to talk about Pyramid Head. There's a good bit of symbolism to this guy, and one of the key points of which is made by James himself during their final encounter. He claims he needed them, that subconsciously he wanted to be punished for his sins. As much as he tried to forget it, some corner of his mind knew he killed Mary. As much of a different chain of events as he wanted to paint for himself, Silent Hill would not permit him to deny his actions. In happier times, it's likely that James and Mary visited Silent Hill, back when it simply was a vacation resort town. It's quite possible that when they did so, they visited the Historical Society, where James may have seen the painting Misty Day, Remains of the Judgment, which featured an executioner that bears an uncanny resemblance to Pyramid Head. James may have tucked this image away in his subconscious, thus manifesting it as his personal punisher. Upon finally admitting his guilt, the two Pyramid Heads attack one last time to test him, to see if he really does have the conviction to overcome them. Upon seeing their purpose has been served and they're no longer needed, they destroy themselves, judging that James is indeed ready to confront the last of his personal demons, Maria. They thus leave the items behind that he needs to pass through the final door. However, the symbolism of Pyramid Head doesn't stop there. His actions the entire time are related to James's guilt, acting as a punisher in both a physical and a mental sense. In two of the first encounters with him, he's found simulating rape with other monsters, first a pair of mannequins, and then a lying figure. As discussed earlier, these monsters both symbolize James's frustrations with his relations with Mary. Thus, Pyramid Head shows a bit of James's darker side in this, illustrating his most base frustrations. There are also the two times James is forced to watch as Pyramid Head kills Maria. Again, James's darker side is laid bare, Pyramid Head acting as James himself, killing a representation of Mary. However, Pyramid Head will not hesitate to attack James, willing to punish his body as much as his mind. In a sense, it is notable that Pyramid Head acts as sort of judge, jury, and executioner. He can never be destroyed except by himself. He, and he alone, will decide when James is strong enough. The encounters with Pyramid Head seem to serve as a test of sorts, gauging James's progress, seeing how willing he is to overcome adversity and learn what needs to be learned. He even opens the path forward for James sometimes, such as draining the water from the Blue Creek apartments and pushing him into a room at Brookhaven Hospital where he can find the last number code he needs. The question then arises, what of the second Pyramid Head? For most of the game, only one of them is around, but then at the end, there's suddenly two of them. One might notice their colors are slightly different. These colors are also represented on the egg items they give you upon their demise. One is rust-colored. This is the color of old, dried blood, exposed to the air for a long time. This one comes from James's feelings of guilt over Mary's death. But what of the new one? This one is scarlet red. This is the color of freshly spilled blood. The predominant fan theory, and one that seems to make sense to me, is that this one comes from his new feelings of guilt over killing Eddie. Despite it being done in self-defense, as, well, let's face it, there was no talking Eddie down once he went crazy, James still felt badly for ending his life. It is rather telling, though, that after expressing his remorse for killing another human being, his thoughts immediately go to Mary. It seems like this is when things really start to unravel for James, as this is about the time the mind screw of Mary's letter vanishing begins. It's rather interesting to look at the deeper meaning of these things. It's something that Silent Hill in general does rather well. It adds such depth to the story and setting, and makes it quite an interesting world to explore. Anyway, that's the end for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.